Most men believe attraction is built by effort, by presence, by giving more. That belief is why they are forgotten. Somewhere right now, a woman is checking her phone again. She is replaying a sentence you said days ago, searching it for meaning. She is wondering why you haven't reached out, why your silence feels louder than other men's attention. And you are not playing games. You are not hiding. You are simply living, focused, moving forward, unaware of the pressure building quietly in her mind. This is not about charm, or money, or looks. It is about occupying space without asking for permission. Most men try to enter a woman's life by force. A few enter her thoughts by absence. There is a psychological line where interest turns into pursuit, where comfort turns into tension, where attention reverses direction. Once you understand where that line is, the entire dynamic changes, permanently. This knowledge is powerful, and misused it can damage people. Used correctly, it creates clarity instead of chaos. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. And if you value calm, grounded insight over noise, consider subscribing. I learned early that a woman's mind is not an open field. It is a city. Most of it is already occupied before you ever arrive. It's work deadlines, family obligations, financial pressure, old wounds, private ambitions, quiet fears she never says out loud. There's very little unused space, and almost none of it is offered freely. What remains is valuable, limited, protected. Most men never understand this. They assume attention is granted through effort, through volume, through repetition. They keep knocking, keep talking, keep showing up, believing persistence equals importance. It doesn't. It creates noise, and noise gets filtered out. In her mental city, these men are placed on the outskirts, temporary structures, easily removed, forgotten without consequence. They are familiar faces she doesn't miss when they disappear, billboards she passes without reading. I was one of them once, and I watched how quickly I could be erased. What separates men who are remembered from men who are ignored has nothing to do with talent or resources. It has everything to do with architecture. Some men don't ask for space. They build something that cannot be ignored, something that changes how the city functions once it exists. They become structurally significant. A structure changes traffic patterns. It creates reference points. It becomes something she navigates around even when she's not consciously thinking about it. Once it's there, removing it requires effort, emotional cost, disruption. Most men try to be pleasant, agreeable, easy to digest. Those men leave no trace. The men who stay in her mind do not try to be consumed quickly. They do not offer themselves as finished products. They do not rush clarity. They allow friction, tension, unresolved edges. Her mind does the rest. The human brain is not designed to let unfinished things go. It doesn't release incomplete loops. It keeps returning to them, searching for resolution. This is not romance. It is wiring. When something feels unresolved, it occupies space. When something feels concluded, it exits. Most men explain themselves fully. They reveal their intentions immediately. They clarify their feelings. They answer every question. They remove uncertainty because they believe certainty creates safety. Certainty creates closure, and closure creates disinterest. I stopped offering closure. Instead, I allowed space to remain, not silence. Space. There is a difference. Silence is empty. Space is active. It invites projection, interpretation, imagination. When a woman does not fully understand you, her mind tries to finish the picture. She fills gaps with meaning. She assigns depth. she creates stories. And those stories are not neutral. They are tailored to her desires, her values, her emotional needs. She is not imagining you as you are. She is imagining you as she wants you to be. And because the image comes from her, it carries weight. Most men try to insert themselves into her life directly. The men who matter let her mind invite them in. This is where scarcity begins. Not scarcity of availability, but scarcity of access. Access to clarity, access to certainty, access to emotional resolution. Her internal system assigns value the same way any market does. What is abundant is cheap. What is limited becomes precious. Men flood her with presents, constant messages, immediate responses, endless reassurance. They believe attention builds value. It does the opposite. It collapses it. When something is always available, it requires no effort to obtain. And what requires no effort is not protected. I learned to control supply, not to manipulate, but to remain intact. My time did not expand to fill every opening. My attention was not unconditional. My validation was not automatic. This was not detachment. It was selectivity. Selectivity forces evaluation. When she cannot predict your availability, she notices it. When she cannot assume your attention, she values it. When she cannot access you on demand, your presence increases in significance. Scarcity does not mean disappearing. It means being deliberate. It means your presence carries weight because it is not constant. Some men mistake this for coldness. It isn't. Coldness creates distance without meaning. Scarcity creates presence without saturation. I did not withdraw randomly. I withdrew when my presence became expected, when appreciation declined, when access was assumed. At that moment, remaining available would have trained her to value me less. Human psychology prioritizes loss over gain. What we fear losing commands more attention than what we expect to keep. When you shift from being guaranteed to being conditional, the mind reacts. Not with panic, with focus. She begins tracking patterns, replaying interactions, searching for causes. Her attention turns inward toward you, without you saying a word. This is where pursuit begins. Not through action, but through absence that has meaning. Every woman carries internal voids, unmet needs that influence her choices without asking permission. These voids are not weaknesses. They are human. Some women hunger for validation beyond appearance. Others crave intensity to escape routine. Some need relief from responsibility. Others want the challenge of earning attention they've never had to work for. Most men try to fill all voids at once. They overwhelm. They blur. They become replaceable. The men who matter identify which void exists and do not rush to fill it completely. They position themselves as relevant without becoming consumed. When you meet a void too quickly, you eliminate tension. When you meet it partially, you create attachment. The difference is restraint. I did not try to complete her emotional experience. I allowed her to want more. And wanting creates movement. Wanting creates pursuit. This is the moment most men destroy their advantage. They feel the shift. They sense interest rising, and they rush in. They explain. They secure. They finalize. They end the story at the moment it becomes valuable. I learned to let it remain unfinished. Because unfinished structures demand attention. And attention is the currency that determines who stays and who fades. Attraction is not built by force. It is built by occupying space without filling it. There is a flaw in the way most men think about connection. They believe clarity creates security. They believe resolution builds trust. They believe explaining everything prevents misunderstanding. What it actually prevents is depth. The mind is not satisfied by answers. It is activated by questions. And the more personal the question, the harder it is to silence. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the brain to hold on to unfinished tasks more tightly than completed ones. It is why an interrupted song repeats endlessly, why an unresolved conversation lingers, why a story without an ending stays alive long after it should have faded. This is not theory, it is observation. Most men try to be complete stories. They introduce themselves clearly. They define their intentions. They outline their emotions. They resolve tension before it has time to mature. They behave like instruction manuals. Thorough, predictable, disposable once read. I stopped doing that. I began leaving sentences unfinished, not verbally, but emotionally. I allowed conversations to end without summary. I let moments pass without explanation. I shared pieces of myself without offering a conclusion. This wasn't deception. It was discipline. When a woman cannot fully resolve you, her mind keeps returning. Not because she is confused, but because the loop remains open. And open loops demand energy. She starts asking questions internally. Who is he really? What does he think? Why did he say that? Why didn't he follow up? What does that silence mean? And the important part is this, that she asks these questions without you prompting them. Most men try to stay present in her life physically. The men who matter stay present cognitively. They are not always around, but they are always processed. This is where imagination takes over. Her mind fills the gaps you leave behind, and it does not fill them with neutrality. It fills them with meaning drawn from her own desires, fears, and hopes. She assigns intention where none was stated, depth where none was claimed, value where none was demanded. She is not responding to you anymore. She is responding to the version of you her mind is constructing. And that version is powerful because it is hers. This is why overexposure kills attraction. When everything is known, nothing remains active. The brain closes the loop and moves on. Familiarity without tension becomes background noise. I learned that mystery is not created by hiding. It is created by pacing. Revelation too fast collapses intrigue. Revelation too slow feels evasive. The balance lies in revealing enough to engage curiosity without satisfying it. Think of it like a melody that stops just before resolution. The mind wants to finish it, and because it cannot, it replays it. Most men fear being misunderstood, so they clarify. They explain. They correct interpretations. They eliminate ambiguity. Ambiguity is not a flaw. It is a tool. When you remove all ambiguity, you remove participation. She becomes a consumer of information rather than a contributor to meaning, and consumers move on when the product no longer excites them. When you allow ambiguity, she becomes involved. She invests mental energy. She assigns significance. She becomes attached to the process of understanding you. This is not manipulation. It is restraint. I did not try to control her thoughts. I simply stopped doing the work for her. There is another layer most men miss. The brain does not just seek completion. It prioritizes emotional completion over factual completion. It is less concerned with what happened and more concerned with how it felt. When an interaction ends without emotional resolution, the feeling remains active. And feelings are sticky. A conversation that ends cleanly is forgotten. A conversation that ends with emotional tension lingers. This is why arguments replay. Why goodbyes haunt. Why moments of near connection feel heavier than full connection. Most men chase closure because they think it creates peace. It does. But peace is not what drives desire. Tension does. Not chaos, not anxiety. Tension. The tension of not knowing, of not having access, of not being finished. I did not seek to confuse. I sought to remain incomplete. When I left, I did not leave emotionally wrapped packages. I left loose ends, threads she could pull, questions she could revisit. Her mind did the rest. At this point, something important shifts. She is no longer reacting to your actions. She is reacting to her thoughts about you. And thoughts are far harder to escape than people. You can block a number. You cannot block a memory loop. This is where pursuit begins, quietly. She does not decide to chase. She finds herself thinking, checking, wondering, creating reasons to re-engage. And from her perspective, it feels natural. It feels internal. It feels like desire. She does not experience it as influence. She experiences it as interest. Most men believe attraction is built through addition. More time, more words, more presence, more reassurance. I learned it is built through subtraction, removing certainty, removing predictability, removing emotional completion, not all at once, gradually, intentionally. This requires control. Most men do not have it. They feel tension and rush to relieve it. They sense distance and close it immediately. They feel curiosity and answer it. They are afraid of losing the moment. The men who stay are not afraid of pauses. They understand that pauses are where meaning forms. I allowed silence to exist without rushing to fill it. I allowed curiosity to breathe. I allowed questions to remain unanswered longer than felt comfortable. And in that discomfort, attachment grew. Because the mind does not attach to what is easy to understand. It attaches to what it is still trying to resolve. By the time she reached out again, it was not because I pulled her back. It was because her mind hadn't let me go. This is the difference between being pursued and being present. Presence can be ignored. Psychological occupancy cannot. And once you occupy that space, removal becomes difficult. Not because you demand it, but because the structure is already there. Attraction does not deepen when you explain yourself. It deepens when you allow yourself to remain unfinished. After you understand how the mind clings to what is unfinished, the next truth becomes unavoidable. Value is never assigned in isolation. It is calculated. Every woman carries an internal valuation system. It runs quietly, constantly, without asking permission. It determines what deserves attention, what can be postponed, and what can be discarded without regret. This system does not respond to intention. It responds to supply. Most men try to increase their value by increasing their presence. More messages, faster replies, greater availability, endless reassurance. They believe proximity equals importance. It does not. In any market, abundance drives price down. When supply overwhelms demand, value collapses. The same principle governs human attention. When your presence is constant, it becomes invisible. When your availability is guaranteed, it becomes assumed. When your validation is automatic, it becomes meaningless. I watched men flood her world with themselves. They treated attention like currency that had to be spent aggressively before it expired. And in doing so, they devalued it completely. I stopped flooding. I controlled supply. This was not about withdrawal as punishment. It was about refusing to participate in self-devaluation. I did not expand to fill every gap in her schedule. I did not respond to every signal immediately. I did not reward every bid for attention. not because I was disinterested, because I was selective. Selectivity changes the frame. When something must be earned, it is evaluated differently than something that is given freely. Most men operate like clearance sales. Everything available, all the time. No conditions, no scarcity. The result is predictable. No urgency, no excitement, no pursuit. I chose to operate like a limited offering, not rare in existence, but rare in access. This created friction, and friction creates focus. When my attention was not immediately available, it became noticeable. When my time was not guaranteed, it became valuable. When my validation was not automatic, it became meaningful. This is not emotional distance. It is intentional presence. Distance without intention feels cold. Scarcity with intention feels powerful. I did not disappear. I reduced frequency. I did not ignore. I delayed. I did not withhold interest. I calibrated it. The goal was not to be absent. It was to ensure that when I was present, it mattered. Human psychology is loss-averse. The fear of losing something outweighs the pleasure of gaining it. This is not emotional weakness. It is survival wiring. When your presence becomes predictable, there is nothing to lose. When it becomes conditional, the mind pays attention. The shift is subtle. She does not panic. She recalibrates. She begins to notice patterns. She wonders. She checks. The moment she starts monitoring your availability is the moment your value has increased in her internal system. This is where most men fail. They sense the shift and rush to stabilize it. They reintroduce abundance to restore comfort. And in doing so, they reset their value back to zero. Comfort is not desire. Desire requires tension, not stress, not insecurity. Tension exists between access and uncertainty, between interest and restraint, between presence and absence. I learned to sit in that space without collapsing it. This required discipline, emotional control, the ability to tolerate her not knowing everything immediately, the ability to tolerate my own urge to overgive. Most men cannot tolerate this. They relieve tension instinctively. They answer too quickly. They explain too much. They show up too often. They think they are being generous. They are being cheap. Scarcity only works when it is authentic. Artificial withdrawal is obvious. Sudden disappearance triggers suspicion. Extreme distance signals disinterest. This is not about vanishing. It is about rhythm. I adjusted my rhythm when appreciation declined, when access was assumed, when my presence stopped being noticed. At that point, staying available would have trained her to expect less value from me. So I pulled back, slightly, enough to be felt, and her behavior changed. She became more attentive, more engaged, more deliberate. She began initiating. She began investing, not because I demanded it, because her internal valuation system adjusted. This is where many men confuse ethics with manipulation. They assume any control of availability is deceitful. It isn't. Boundaries are not manipulation. Offering unlimited access to someone who does not value it is self-abandonment. Controlling access is self-respect. I did not restrict access to provoke anxiety. I restricted it to preserve meaning. When you are always accessible, you are interchangeable. When access requires intention, you are distinct. This applies beyond communication. It applies to emotional availability, to validation, to reassurance. I did not validate every insecurity. I did not reward every emotional fluctuation. I acknowledged selectively. I reinforced stability, not volatility. This created a dynamic where my approval was not the default state. It was earned through consistency, respect, and effort. An effort changes perception. When someone works for something, they protect it. When they receive it freely, they neglect it. The men who complain about being taken for granted taught others how to treat them, not through words, through availability. I stopped teaching people to undervalue me. Scarcity is not a tactic. It is a reflection of priorities. When your life is full, your time becomes valuable. When your mission is central, distractions lose power. True scarcity comes from focus, not strategy. If you have nothing else to invest in, you will overinvest in her, and she will feel it. The most powerful form of scarcity is not controlled absence. It is genuine engagement elsewhere. When your attention is directed toward purpose, growth, and direction, it cannot be given away cheaply. And people sense that. Attraction does not increase when you offer more. It increases when what you offer has weight. Once you understand scarcity, the next layer reveals itself. Scarcity determines value. But value alone does not create attachment. Attachment forms where something essential is missing. Every woman carries internal gaps, not obvious flaws, not visible wounds. Quiet deficiencies shaped by experience, environment, and repetition. These gaps influence attraction more than appearance, status, or words ever could. Most men never notice them. They try to become everything at once. Supportive, exciting, safe, impressive, available. They overwhelm instead of aligning. I learned to look for the gap. There are 4 primary voids that shape feminine desire. Almost every woman carries at least one, often more. These voids are not conscious demands. They are background drivers. They guide choices without explanation. The first is the validation void. This belongs to the woman who has been seen but not known. She receives attention for her appearance, her role, her utility. Compliments without comprehension. Desire without depth. She is surrounded by men who want access, not understanding. She is starved for recognition of her inner world. Most men validate superficially. They praise what is obvious: beauty, charm, presence. It feels good for a moment. Then it disappears. I did not validate what she already knew. I validated what she rarely had acknowledged. Her thought patterns, her restraint, her contradictions, her intelligence, her emotional discipline. I did not do this often. I did it precisely. And because it was rare, it landed. The second void is the excitement void. This belongs to the woman trapped in repetition. Predictable days, familiar conversations, safe routines. She's not unhappy. She's bored. Boredom is dangerous. It seeks disruption. Most men offer comfort, consistency, reliability. They believe stability creates attraction. It creates safety. Safety without stimulation fades. I introduced unpredictability, not chaos. Variation, new perspectives, unexpected energy, shifts in rhythm. I did not become her entertainment. I became the interruption, and interruptions are remembered. The third void is the escape void. This belongs to the woman carrying responsibility like weight, expectations, performance, control. She is always managing, always containing, always on. She craves relief. Most men add demands, emotional needs, reassurance requirements, insecurity. They become another responsibility. I became a space where effort was not required, where she did not have to perform, where silence was allowed, where she could drop posture, not by being passive, by being grounded. A calm presence feels like oxygen to someone drowning in obligation. The fourth void is the conquest void. This belongs to the woman who has never had to pursue. Attention has always been abundant, approval guaranteed, desire effortless. What is freely obtained loses value. She does not crave validation. She craves challenge. Most men rush toward her. They compete openly. They try to prove worth. They confirm her power. I did not. I did not compete. I evaluated. I did not chase. I observed. And in that reversal, interest ignited. The mistake most men make is trying to fill all voids fully. They overcorrect. They rush to satisfy. They eliminate tension. When you fully satisfy a void, it closes. And closed systems move on. I did not fill voids completely. I positioned myself as relevant to them, enough to be noticed, not enough to be consumed. This balance is where attachment forms. Attachment does not come from satisfaction. It comes from partial fulfillment paired with continued potential. This is why people crave what they almost had. Why near misses haunt more than completed experiences. I did not become her solution. I became her question. Which void you engage matters less than how you engage it. Over-delivery kills desire. Under-delivery prevents attachment. Precision creates pursuit. This requires observation, restraint, timing. Most men are reactive. They respond to signals immediately. They fill space as soon as it opens. They mistake opportunity for obligation. I learned to wait. I watched how she responded to validation. Did she relax or seek more? I watched how she reacted to unpredictability. Did she lean in or retreat? I noticed whether she sought escape or stimulation. I did not guess. I observed, and once I understood the gap, I adjusted my presence accordingly, not to manipulate, to align. This is the difference between attraction that feels natural and attraction that feels forced. Alignment feels effortless because it fits an existing structure. When you align with a void, resistance disappears. When you try to create desire where no gap exists, effort explodes. Most men complain that women are confusing. They are not. They are consistent. They respond to what touches unmet needs. When you touch nothing essential, you are ignored. This is also where ethical responsibility begins. A void can be acknowledged without being exploited. There is a difference. I did not deepen dependency. I did not isolate. I did not replace her support systems. I did not position myself as her only source. I remained supplemental, significant, but not exclusive. Unhealthy obsession forms when a man becomes the sole supplier of an emotional need. Healthy attraction forms when he becomes a meaningful contributor without dominance. The difference lies in intention and restraint. I did not rescue. I did not complete. I did not claim ownership over her emotional stability. I allowed connection to exist without consumption. This is difficult, because when you feel someone leaning in, the instinct is to pull them closer, to secure, to lock in. That instinct destroys leverage. I let leaning continue, and in that space, pursuit grew. She began offering more, initiating more, investing emotionally. Because effort creates value in the mind of the giver, people protect what they work for. Most men want to be chosen. They forget that being chosen is less powerful than being pursued. Pursuit happens when desire meets resistance without rejection, when interest encounters restraint without indifference. I did not block desire. I slowed it. And slowing creates depth. Attraction is not built by giving everything. It is built by understanding what is missing and refusing to fill it too quickly. There is a moment in every dynamic when familiarity begins to replace intention. It arrives quietly. No argument, no signal. Just a subtle shift in how your presence is received. Your messages are expected, not appreciated. Your time is assumed, not valued. Your attention is received without effort. Most men ignore this moment. Or worse, they respond by giving more. That is where leverage is lost. Strategic withdrawal is not disappearance. It is calibration. It is the deliberate reduction of presence at the precise moment when presence has become taken for granted. This is not a tactic. It is a response. Human psychology assigns value based on perceived risk. When something feels guaranteed, it no longer requires attention. When it feels conditional, the mind becomes alert. When your availability shifts from assumed to uncertain, her internal system recalculates. Not with fear, with focus. I did not withdraw to punish. I withdrew to restore balance. When appreciation declined, I reduced frequency. When initiative disappeared, I stepped back. When effort became one-sided, I stopped carrying the weight. This required emotional control. Because withdrawal feels counterintuitive. The instinct is to fix, to explain, to re-engage harder. That instinct comes from fear. Men fear losing connection more than they value maintaining structure. So they chase stability at the cost of respect. I learned to tolerate distance without anxiety. Strategic withdrawal only works when timing is precise. Withdraw too early and attachment never forms. Withdraw too obviously and the behavior is recognized. Withdraw too completely and the connection collapses. The goal is not absence. It is contrast. When you reduce presence slightly, the difference is felt. When you reduce it deliberately, the mind notices. I did not announce withdrawal. I did not explain it. Explanation removes impact. I simply redirected energy. My responses slowed. My availability narrowed. My focus shifted back to my priorities. And something changed. She noticed, not consciously at first, subconsciously. She checked more, initiated more, became more attentive, not because she felt abandoned, because she felt the possibility of loss. Loss activates attention. Most men fear triggering insecurity. They overcorrect. They reassure endlessly. They maintain access even when it costs them leverage. Reassurance creates comfort. Comfort without effort breeds complacency. I did not reassure. I remained consistent in tone, not in availability. Consistency in character matters more than consistency in access. I did not become cold. I became selective. There's a difference between distance and detachment. Distance maintains interest. Detachment ends it. Strategic withdrawal maintains emotional warmth while limiting access. The signal is not disinterest. The signal is boundaries. Boundaries change dynamics. When access requires effort, effort increases. When effort increases, investment follows. Most men believe investment comes first and effort follows. It is the opposite. Effort creates investment. When she begins to work for your attention, she begins to value it. When she values it, she protects it. This is where many men sabotage themselves. They feel her leaning in and immediately reward it with full access. They eliminate the very tension that created the shift. I resisted that impulse. I acknowledged effort, but I did not overcompensate. I reciprocated proportionally, enough to reinforce, not enough to flood. Strategic withdrawal is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing calibration, a constant adjustment based on behavior, not emotion. When effort increases, presence can increase slightly. When effort drops, presence decreases. This creates a feedback loop that trains behavior without words. Most men try to correct dynamics through communication. They explain needs. They ask for effort. They negotiate attraction. Attraction is not negotiated. It is responded to. Behavior changes behavior. Words create resistance. I let my actions speak, and this is where ethics matter. Strategic withdrawal becomes harmful when used to induce anxiety, fear, or dependence. That is not what I practiced. I did not isolate. I did not disappear. I did not threaten loss. I simply stopped overgiving. Overgiving teaches people to take without effort. When you remove excess supply, demand reveals itself. If demand does not rise, there was never value there to begin with. This is the part most men avoid. They fear discovering the truth. They prefer illusion to clarity. I accepted the outcome either way. If withdrawal led to pursuit, interest was genuine. If it led to distance, attachment was imagined. Either result preserved my position. Strategic withdrawal also forces you to confront your own neediness. When you pull back, discomfort surfaces. You feel the urge to check, to reach out, to fill silence. That urge is not love. It is attachment to validation. I learned to sit with it. The ability to withdraw without anxiety is a marker of internal stability, and stability is attractive. Women do not pursue men who need them. They pursue men who choose them. Withdrawal creates choice. When you are always available, there is no choice. There is obligation. When availability is conditional, choice exists. I chose when to engage. And because I chose, my engagement mattered. This also protects against unhealthy obsession. When a woman increases effort, you do not escalate indefinitely. You maintain balance. You allow connection without consumption. Healthy attraction grows in proportion. Unhealthy obsession grows asymmetrically. I watched for imbalance. When attention became excessive, I grounded it. When dependency signs appeared, I widened space. Not to reject, but to normalize. Responsibility increases with influence. Strategic withdrawal is not about control. It is about alignment. Aligning access with effort, presence with value, attention with respect. Most men think attraction is created by pursuit. It is sustained by restraint. When you stop chasing comfort and start preserving structure, the dynamic changes. She does not feel pushed away. She feels the need to move closer. And the closer she moves, the more intentional her actions become. Pursuit does not begin with chasing. It begins when access is no longer guaranteed. Curiosity is not accidental. It is engineered by incompleteness. Women are not drawn to what is fully understood. They are drawn to what continues to unfold. The mistake most men make is believing transparency creates attraction. They reveal everything, explain everything, and remove every layer of uncertainty. They become easy to read and easy to put down. I stopped being fully readable, not by lying, not by performing mystery, by allowing complexity to exist without explanation. Most men approach connection like a reference manual. All facts available, all intentions stated, all behaviors predictable. Once the information is processed, interest declines. I learned to operate like a serialized story. Just when clarity seemed close, a new layer appeared. Not a contradiction, an expansion. This kept her mind engaged. Curiosity is sustained by progression. When nothing changes, attention fades. When perception shifts, attention returns. I did not contradict myself. I revealed myself gradually. This required restraint, because it is tempting to be understood quickly, to be validated for who you are, to feel seen immediately. Immediate understanding ends exploration. When she thought she had me figured out, I allowed her to discover she hadn't. Through action, not explanation. Through behavior, not statements. This created a moving target, not unstable. Evolving. Her mind stayed active because the picture never finalized. Curiosity also depends on reinforcement patterns. The most addictive systems in the world operate on intermittent reinforcement. rewards that arrive unpredictably but meaningfully. Most men operate on fixed schedules. Consistent attention, reliable validation, predictable availability. This creates emotional salary, safe, steady, ignored over time. I shifted to performance-based engagement, not manipulation, calibration. My attention was warm but not constant. My validation was sincere but infrequent. My availability was present but not guaranteed. This unpredictability created anticipation. Anticipation amplifies reward. When attention arrives unexpectedly, it carries weight. When validation is rare, it lands deeper. When availability is not assumed, presence feels earned. This is not inconsistency. Inconsistency lacks pattern. Intermittent reinforcement has rhythm without predictability. I did not vanish and reappear randomly. I responded based on context, energy, and alignment. The pattern was not visible. The impact was. Her emotional system adapted. She began to notice when attention arrived. She felt its absence. She valued its return. Most men fear unpredictability. They believe consistency equals trust. Trust is built through reliability of character, not reliability of access. My tone remained grounded. My behavior remained respectful. Only access varied. This distinction matters. Unreliable men break promises. Unpredictable men vary presence without violating integrity. I did not cancel commitments. I did not deceive. I simply did not overextend. Curiosity deepened because she could not forecast emotional outcomes precisely. The brain pays attention when prediction becomes difficult. This is why monotony kills desire. When outcomes are known, engagement drops. I also learned that curiosity is relational, not theatrical. You cannot manufacture intrigue by acting mysterious. People sense performance. Authentic curiosity comes from a full life, from complexity that cannot be summarized quickly. When you are deeply engaged in your own direction, you do not reveal yourself all at once. There is too much to unpack. I did not try to impress. I allowed discovery. She became a participant rather than a spectator. And participation creates investment. The more effort she put into understanding me, the more value she assigned to that understanding. Time spent decoding becomes attachment. Most men try to make themselves easy to love. They forget that effort increases attachment. This principle also applies emotionally. I did not provide constant reassurance. I provided emotional peaks without eliminating valleys. This created emotional contrast. Flat emotional landscapes are forgettable. Variation is memorable. I introduced surprise, not drama, novelty, shifts in experience, new environments, new perspectives. Each new experience reframed previous ones. The story expanded. This prevented saturation. The mind disengages when it believes it has extracted all value. I ensured there was always more beneath the surface. But restraint was critical. Curiosity can turn into frustration if unresolved too long. The goal is engagement, not confusion. I paid attention to feedback. Leaning in signaled progress. Pulling back signaled adjustment. This was a dynamic exchange, not a script. Curiosity thrives when progression feels possible. When resolution seems close, but never final. I allowed moments of clarity, then introduced depth, not endlessly, intentionally. This maintained momentum. Most men try to hold attention through intensity alone. Intensity without variation burns out. Curiosity sustains engagement long-term. This is why obsession forms around people who remain partially unknown, not because they hide, but because they evolve. I did not try to be a puzzle. I allowed myself to be complex. Complexity cannot be consumed quickly. This also prevented unhealthy attachment. I did not create dependency. I created interest. Interest invites choice. Dependency removes it. I did not want her mind trapped. I wanted it engaged. The difference is respect. Curiosity paired with respect creates attraction. Curiosity paired with deprivation creates anxiety. I never deprived. I paced. And pacing turned attention into pursuit. When she reached out, it was not to relieve insecurity. It was to continue exploration. That is the difference between chasing and choosing. Most men want to be wanted. They forget that being explored is more powerful than being desired. Curiosity keeps the door open. Completion closes it. Desire does not exist in isolation. It is shaped by context. Women do not only evaluate a man by who he is. They evaluate him by how he is perceived, by how others respond to him, by the signals his life sends without explanation. Most men try to prove their worth directly. They list achievements. They highlight competence. They display resources. They explain value. This approach fails because value that must be explained feels uncertain. I did not explain my worth. I let it be observed. Social proof is not about status displays or romantic competition. It is about evidence. Quiet confirmation that a man is already chosen by life, already respected, already desired, in ways that do not need narration. When others treat you as valuable, that treatment becomes information. I lived a life that attracted attention without asking for it. People sought my opinion. Groups made space. Opportunities appeared without pursuit, not because I demanded them, because I was aligned with purpose. This changed how she perceived me without a single word spoken. Value confirmed externally carries more weight than value claimed internally. I did not talk about options. I did not reference other women. I did not create jealousy. Those tactics signal insecurity. I allowed social gravity to exist naturally. When she saw that I was welcomed, respected, and engaged elsewhere, it reframed my presence. I was not seeking entry into her world. I was allowing her access to mine. This reversal matters. Men who chase are evaluated. Men who are chosen are investigated. Social proof removes the burden of proof. She does not have to decide if you are valuable. She observes that decision has already been made by others. This triggers safety and attraction simultaneously. But social proof alone is not enough. It must be paired with emotional intensity. Most men offer consistency, predictable warmth, stable presence, emotional flatness. They believe safety builds attraction. It builds comfort. Comfort without intensity fades. I learned that the heart remembers peaks, not averages. Emotional intensity does not mean chaos. It means contrast. I created moments that mattered, experiences that felt distinct, times when she felt more alive with me than elsewhere. This was not manipulation. It was intention. I introduced novelty, challenge, growth, shared achievement, meaningful tension. I also allowed space, silence, disagreement, not conflict, friction. Friction creates movement. When everything is smooth, nothing is memorable. I did not aim to make her feel good all the time. I aimed to make her feel engaged. Engagement requires variation. I watched how she responded to emotional shifts. Leaning in signaled connection. Pulling away signaled recalibration. I adjusted without explanation. This created a rhythm she could not replicate with others. The combination of social proof and emotional intensity creates elevation. You are not just desirable, you are distinct. Distinct experiences cannot be easily replaced. Most men become interchangeable because they provide similar emotional outputs. Compliments, availability, reassurance, predictability. I provided experiences that carried weight. This also created emotional memory. Memory anchors attachment. She did not just remember me. She remembered how she felt around me. And feelings are difficult to overwrite. But intensity must be controlled. Too much creates instability. Too little creates boredom. I maintained balance. I did not overwhelm. I punctuated. Moments of closeness, followed by space. Moments of intensity, followed by calm. This allowed emotions to settle and deepen rather than spike and crash. I did not chase emotional reactions. I allowed them to develop organically. This is where many men fail. They try to entertain constantly. They exhaust themselves and her. I conserved energy. I also understood that intensity without grounding leads to obsession. Grounding without intensity leads to indifference. I stayed grounded. My emotional state did not fluctuate wildly. My behavior remained steady. Only the experiences varied. This created safety within stimulation. She felt alive without feeling destabilized. Social proof reinforced this. I was not consumed by her attention. I was not isolated. I was integrated. Isolation breeds dependence. Integration breeds attraction. I remained part of a broader world. Purpose, community, direction. This prevented her from becoming the center of my life, and that made her want to be part of it. Most men place women at the center too quickly. They collapse their world around connection. That creates pressure. I did not collapse. I expanded. Expansion invites participation. She did not feel responsible for my fulfillment. She felt invited into it. This distinction is subtle but critical. When a woman feels she must maintain a man's emotional stability, desire erodes. When she feels she can add to an already full life, desire grows. Social proof signals fullness. Emotional intensity signals depth. Together, they create pursuit. She did not chase because she feared losing me. She chased because she wanted to remain connected to something meaningful. This is the difference between anxiety-driven attachment and value-driven pursuit. One is fragile, the other is stable. I avoided emotional manipulation by maintaining transparency of character. I did not shift values. I did not perform roles. I did not exaggerate outcomes. I let experiences speak. Most men want admiration. I allowed resonance. Resonance lasts longer. When your presence elevates experience, your absence is felt, not as loss, as contrast. And contrast draws people back. Attraction deepens when a man becomes a reference point for intensity and meaning, not because he demands it, because his life reflects it. Most men live inside the present moment of attraction. They focus on today's conversation, tonight's plan, this weekend's outcome. They think in short horizons, reacting to whatever is immediately in front of them. I learned to think in futures, not promises, possibilities. Human motivation is not driven by what is, but by what could be. Anticipation activates the mind more powerfully than satisfaction. The image of a future experience often carries more emotional weight than the experience itself. I stopped trying to secure moments. I started planting directions. I did not talk about what we were doing. I hinted at what might come. Not with guarantees, with openings, suggestions, glimpses, a place we might go, a challenge we could take on, a version of life that felt larger than routine. I did not sell fantasies. I created pathways. The difference matters. False promises create distrust. Open futures create movement. She did not feel led. She felt invited. This shifted the dynamic. She was no longer evaluating whether I fit into her life as it was. She was imagining how her life could expand by staying connected. That imagination became an investment. When a woman starts associating you with future possibility, disengaging from you feels like closing a door. And the mind resists closing doors it has not walked through yet. Most men try to lock certainty. They define the relationship. They clarify roles. They seek labels. They want stability. Stability without vision stagnates. I offered direction without confinement. This allowed desire to breathe. Future investment also reframed effort. Her actions were no longer about pleasing me in the present. They were about maintaining access to potential. Effort shifted naturally. She initiated more, planned more, invested emotionally. Not because she was trying to impress, but because she did not want the future to disappear. This is where emotional anchoring takes hold. The mind links people to feelings, not abstract feelings, specific emotional states. I paid attention to which emotions mattered most to her. Not what she said she wanted, what she responded to. Excitement, relief, confidence, expansion, aliveness. I made sure my presence was consistently associated with those states. Not constantly, strategically. When she felt bored, I introduced stimulation. When she felt constrained, I offered space. When she felt unseen, I offered recognition. Over time, a pattern formed. Her mind began pairing those emotional states with me. This is anchoring. When an emotion repeats in the presence of the same person, the brain links them. Eventually, the thought of that person activates the emotion automatically. This is not chemistry. It is conditioning. But conditioning must be handled carefully. When overused, it creates dependency. When used responsibly, it creates preference. I avoided becoming the sole source. I did not rescue her from every low. I did not position myself as the only escape. I reinforced independence while contributing meaning. This preserved balance. Anchoring works best when you are a strong contributor, not the entire system. Over time, something subtle occurred. When she experienced certain emotions elsewhere, her mind referenced me. When she felt bored, she remembered feeling energized with me. When she felt ordinary, she remembered feeling expanded. When she felt disconnected, she remembered depth. I was no longer just present in her life. I was present in her emotional vocabulary. Other men could offer attention. They could not replicate the association. This is why replacement became difficult. Not impossible. Difficult. I did not become irreplaceable by force. I became distinct by alignment. Most men try to compete on surface traits: attention, availability, affirmation. I competed on emotional memory. Memory outlasts presence. This also changed how absence functioned. When I was not around, my absence did not feel empty. It felt charged. It carried reference. She did not miss me as a person. She missed the emotional state I represented. That is a deeper pull. I also noticed something important. When a woman begins to imagine a future that includes you, her behavior changes without instruction. She becomes more considerate, more intentional, more invested. Not because she fears loss, because she values continuity. Continuity requires effort. Most men ask for effort directly, yet they negotiate it. They request it. They demand it. I never did. Effort emerged naturally because the future mattered. This is the point where pursuit reverses quietly. She is no longer responding to your actions. She is protecting a trajectory. And trajectories have momentum. The mistake most men make at this stage is accelerating. They lock in, they define, they secure. They collapse possibility into certainty. Certainty feels safe. It also feels final. I resisted that urge. I allowed the future to remain open-ended, directional, not defined. This kept engagement alive. I did not withhold commitment out of fear. I delayed definition out of respect for process. Process matters. When you rush definition, you remove the mind's role in construction. When the mind stops constructing, it disengages. I also remained anchored in my own direction. My future did not depend on her participation. It expanded with it. This preserved polarity. A man whose future collapses without a woman creates pressure. A man whose future expands with her creates attraction. I stayed in motion. This made pursuit sustainable. She was not chasing to secure me. She was choosing to stay aligned. Choice feels empowering. Chasing feels exhausting. I wanted choice. Future investment, emotional anchoring, and sustained direction created a dynamic where pursuit did not feel like pursuit. It felt like alignment. And alignment does not require force. It invites continuation. Attraction becomes durable when it is tied to who someone is becoming, not just who they are. I did not become her destination. I became a direction she did not want to lose. What all of this points to is a lesson that goes far beyond attraction. The most powerful shifts in life don't happen when you try harder to be chosen. They happen when you stop building your worth around being chosen at all. Whether in relationships, work, or personal growth, people lose themselves the same way. They overextend. They overexplain. They overgive. They mistake availability for value and effort for meaning. And slowly, without noticing, they teach the world to treat them as replaceable. Real value is not loud. It does not chase approval. It does not rush to be understood. It is built quietly through boundaries, direction, and restraint. Through knowing when to engage and when to step back. Through choosing alignment over validation. When you stop centering your life around how others respond to you, something changes. Your time gains weight. Your presence gains clarity. Your absence gains meaning. Not because you are manipulating anyone, but because you are finally respecting yourself. This is not about making people chase you. It's about becoming someone worth moving toward. And that applies everywhere. In love, in leadership, in life. If this perspective resonated with you, I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment and share what stood out or where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. And if you value calm, grounded conversations about psychology, growth, and self-respect, consider subscribing to the channel. Not for noise, for clarity,